What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, aka Karate23, here on YouTube. Joining me, as always, is a co-host on the Casual Spikes podcast. Is Randy from Modern with Randy. Randy, how you doing?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad.
Nadu bad?
What?
Uh, I need you to really enunciate the T's because then it sounds like Nadu and it starts putting me into shock. I get flashbacks from the Pro Tour.
Fair. No, I'm not doing too bad. I was able to qualify for DC on the literal last weekend possible. So happy about that.
That just means the Casual Spikes do DC.
Yes.
We'll dress up like Beavis and Butthead and we'll just basically reenact like Beavis and Butthead do America as we go to DC.
All right, so guys, on the last episode of the Castle Spikes podcast,
Dakota got arrested for public indecency. It turns out that too many young people are now working at the White Castle at DC because they don't know who the Great Cornholio is. Oh,
oh,
speaking of so off topic, I know this is a Magic podcast, but I literally just thought of it. There's like this really big dude that does like shorts and stuff, and he's like, "This is like my first day, or like my first or second day at like working at a place is like working at Taco Bell," and he just like is wearing the uniform, and he like walks out of the bathroom, and he's just covered in like brown liquid and just screaming at the employees. It's like, dude, what is this? I wouldn't do anything that extreme. But
speaking
oh my
of
god.
extreme, I think we can talk about the Pioneer metagame and its extreme meta share. I guess would probably be the best way to say this.
Probably because I don't know how to really it's getting I mean I shouldn't say like I guess the format's still like fine, but like it's getting worse at the top and not even like where it has been where we've had
So I
like
think
three decks that
the
have been.
format is fine if you're playing in your local FNM or like your local whatever tournament. Like the metagame seems fine. Even like the RCQs, the metagame seems fine. But as soon as you get into like these bigger tournaments or like even like the Pioneer challenges of like the 32 and 64 man challenges, it becomes pretty obvious that there is the deck to play and then the other decks you can sometimes win with.
Yeah, and I think we've been a three deck format for a while, and we had a few counter picks that were pretty good. Now, whatever has actually changed, because we really haven't had many set releases that impacted like the top end decks. If anything, made some other niche strategies a lot better. But even at the top where we see double digit metagame share for like the best decks and they rotate spots, it's been very clear that there is one deck among those three that are slowly becoming maybe a little too powerful for their britches.
Yes. So I mean, I think the biggest thing here is if you take a look at the last 14 days for the metagame share for Rakdos Vampires, it is up to 31% of the meta. Notably, this is on MTG Goldfish, so it takes a lot of their stats are from Pioneer leagues as well as the Pioneer challenges and stuff like that. So that's a huge metagame share for essentially on Magic Online you can play any deck you want, right? Like most people aren't limited by cost that you would be in paper. Um, so a little while that essentially if you can play every deck in Pioneer, there is, you know, one deck is now showcasing as the best deck or the best deck to be playing. Because even if we look at number two Amalia, which people have called for to be banned or neutered for probably since the inception of the deck, it's at 16% basically. It's 15.8. So it's huge. It's a huge difference. It's double the percentage basically of Rakdos Vampires that is just taking over this metagame.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't quite understand, and I like to think that I'm pretty. I would say pretty in tune, kind of like what's going on in the formats, and I don't quite fully understand what has changed to where we're seeing Rakdos Vampires just see this huge uptick in play more so than the other decks, just because again, it's been relatively balanced. We've seen, all three of them kind of swap places at being number one and number two and whatever. But obviously,
Mhm.
we have two decks that are now starting to separate themselves from the rest of the metagame. And then even further from that, one deck separating from that deck in the metagame as well.
Yeah, so I will say, even so, you go back 90 days, just for anybody who's going, oh, what, you went off the 14 days, there's just, a bunch of people have been playing Rakdos Vampires for 14 days, that's all it is. If we go back 90 days, we still have Rakdos Vampires being number one in the meta and at 15%. So even if, like, say for whatever reasons, a bunch of people suddenly is like, I want to play Rakdos Vampires at Pioneer, it still was 15% of the meta, which is huge just
Mm-hmm.
by itself, being 15% of the meta. And then it's at least a little better when we go back 90 days. The next deck is at 13.5 and then 10, being Phoenix and Amalia. So
Mm-hmm.
that looks better. But then we go to 30 days and we see Rakdos Vampires being 23%, with Amalia being 16%. So we're getting more of that separation already than Phoenix at 12. And then when we go down to 14, you know, we've already said 31%, 16%, and then 12% with Is It Phoenix. And so, like, this wouldn't be crazy if it wasn't for the next deck isn't at 5.7% of the
Mm-hmm.
meta. So, like, in the top four decks, it goes from 5.7 to 31%. This is, we are we're at the same percentage basically of what we were at with Denver's RC in Modern, where Rhinos was literally just, you were playing Rhinos or you were playing the deck that was subpar to Rhinos. And that's basically where we're getting at this point, where you're playing Rakdos Vampires, or you're playing the deck that's a step below Rakdos Vampires, and you're playing the deck that's a step below the deck that's a step below Rakdos Vampires. And it's just like, that's not a healthy metagame.
No, and the hard thing is, and I think something that has been on the minds of like players, it should be on the minds of players, is like how do you make a mid-range deck worse when they're literally just playing usually the most efficient cards that do the most efficient thing. Like you can't, like Fable the Mirrorbreaker, we know is like a great card, but if you're like, no, we can't ban Fable, then okay, like what else do we ban? Because Sorin is like a very powerful card, right? Like we know that it's half of the Vein Ripper combo, and obviously makes the other random vampires better as well. But is it really, like, aside from doing the Vein Ripper thing, like is it really that good? And there's other good vampires you can put into play, but Vein Ripper is obviously the best one. So then you want to get rid of Vein Ripper. Well, Vein Ripper by itself, it's like with these two cards, they're kind of locked together, where one of them might get hit for the sake of the other one, and that kind of sucks because I think individually they're just two really good cards, but together they're obviously give you one of the best turn threes that you can have in Pioneer, short of winning the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially the second best turn three you can have, I think, in Pioneer. I think the first one being um, comboing off with Amalia and attacking with Amalia on turn three. So, like, going turn one Life Gain Guy, turn two Amalia, turn three Wild Growth Walker is like the best turn three you can have in Pioneer,
Mm.
barring interaction and things like that. Obviously, like in a vacuum shell, that's the best turn three in Pioneer by far, because it just wins you the game on turn three
Oh yeah.
in a vacuum. And then, yeah, obviously, I mean, one sided show and tell is definitely a good backup to being winning the game on turn three. But like, the problem is there's not like there's no counterplay to Soren Vein Ripper too, and I think is the biggest problem, right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
there's counterplay to um Amalia, right? You kill their creatures, you can exile them, do whatever. Like, there's a lot of interaction, right? But like, on turn three, if I just go Soren, I go Soren as long as it resolves. I still have priority. I get to put Vein Ripper into play. There's nothing you can do to stop that outside of countering Soren,
Mm.
because you don't
And
have any priority to kill Soren before I can activate him.
right, and we have kind of this. Hold on, let me find the train of thought here real quick. I hear it. I hear it in the background. I hear the gates coming down. I just gotta find it. Um, so essentially, when we've talked about Vein Ripper before, where Vein Ripper is like a really good creature and the wards sacrifice a creature, really, I think to like newer players and intermediate players, it's like, well, every deck plays creatures. Like, that so what? You lose a creature, they get a trigger. Well, if you're Amalia, you don't really have any direct like removal spells for Vein Ripper. So that's like almost 15-20% of the meta. So like 15-20% of the other decks in the format aren't going to have an answer just straight up for the Vein Ripper. And then you have Phoenix, which is the next most played deck, that does have a spell that could kill it, but they have to then discard a card and sacrifice a creature to do so. And typically they don't want to sacrifice like Ledger Shredder. I mean, they will if they have to, obviously, but it just puts them in a non-ideal situation where maybe if the Ledger Shredder is the only thing they really have going on, that really does set them back quite a bit because even with like the prof builds, you still need a creature to put into play, and you just have like your whole game plan messed up if you have to deal with a turn 3 Vein Ripper. So really, only good decks that are able to do it are the other Rakdos Vampires decks, and you just kind of get into this pissing contest again where you're playing like mid-range mirrors and whoever's more efficient with their resources they have available to them, and slightly whoever draws better ends up winning those games typically.
Yes, and also notably too, your only time to answer a Vein Ripper is on turn 3, kind of. So, saying they go turn 3 Vein Ripper, or excuse me, turn 3 Sworn Vein Ripper, then you go into your turn 3. They have no mana open, no nothing, so you can have your creature you can sacrifice, kill it. You lose 2 life, they gain 2 life, yada yada. So let's say we can't do that in turn 3. We put some creatures on the board. We're gonna take 6 or whatever. It's fine. We'll figure out how to win this game still. Not a problem. They go into their next turn. They just they attack for 6 or 7, whatever, with the plus Sorin, yada yada. They pass back. All right, cool. We drew our removal spell now on turn 4. They have mana open. Key point. So I'm going to target Vein Ripper with insert removal spell. Cool. With a ward trigger on the stack, I'm going to kill your 1 creature.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Yeah. That happens, huh?
Oh yeah.
Like, that is a huge thing that I don't think people realize until it happens to them. Because there's nothing worse than being blown out by that ability. It is an unreal feeling, because Ward is technically a triggered ability, so it goes on the stack, and you can respond to that trigger. And it is the most annoying thing to feel. It's one of the main reasons I got off of Phoenix, was because I've had that happen more than once, where I had to spend my turn 3, digging, looking for things, or looking for my lightning axe to be able to kill Vein Ripper, and it cost me, it took my whole turn 3 to find that. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll play my Picklock Prankster because I don't give a shit about this 1/3. It can die. It's what it was made for. I got my ability off of it. I got the free to fade. That's all I cared about. Go to kill your thing. Cool. Trigger on the stack and kill your Picklock Prankster with Fatal Push. Cool. I'm gonna go to game 2. I'm glad this is a fun interaction for me.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention too that if you let them on tap with a Vein Ripper, they could easily just plus Sorin. So now you're like looking for, I mean, no matter what, 2 removal spells, the way you slice it, whether it's 2 fiery impulses or axe plus impulse, whatever, some combination of things. So now you need 2 creatures, and that same situation is more than likely to happen, where you're just going to lose your whole board. You're going to take 6, they're going to gain 6, and they're still winning the resources game, and that's what Rakdos has been all about since before Sorin Vein Ripper combo, and since that's been a thing.
Yes, we've essentially gone from a Rakdos metagame to a Rakdos metagame. We've just continued to keep Rakdos. So, as much as it's very obvious to sit here and go, well, yeah, obviously Amalia needs something hit, or like needs taken down a peg to a degree. Like, that's a very easy thing to say, right? Amalia kind of suppresses the aggro metagame and stuff like that. So yeah, Amalia does need to be taken out of the equation. But you take her out of the equation, Rakdos Vampire is still very much a real problem. It doesn't just stop becoming a deck. Like, and that's the biggest problem is Rakdos Vampires needs, I think, Sorin or Vein Ripper. I mean, realistically, I think it's a Sorin. You take out Sorin, Vein Ripper's, like, my opponent's casting Vein Ripper on 6, I'm perfectly fine with that. That is a reasonable play. I'm not going to be upset.
Mm-hmm.
When you're putting Vein Ripper on 3, and I am now on the back foot of I have to answer this now or never, no, that's some bullshit.
And Dodge is probably the widely most played like black removal spell and like Fatal Push as well.
Yeah.
I mean, beats like the majority of the removal that is not just destroy target creature. So
Exactly. So, I mean, I think I think the my biggest problem is that I think one Rakdos Vampires needs to be taken down a peg to some degree for sure. And then my other problem is I think if Soren gets taken out, it's not like Rakdos, or it's not that like Rakdos because stops being a deck. It just goes back to being the same mid range plan it was um, pre Pro Tour this deck came out.
Pre-murders of Karlov Manor, sir.
Yeah, okay, pre Murders of Call Off Manor. Like the deck just becomes the same deck that it was back then. Maybe changing some numbers here and there, different removal spells, suite, all that bullshit. But like it becomes the same deck. Like it's still a problem deck that has essentially pushed out every other mid range deck you can play. I'm a big fan of banning Fable the Mirrorbreaker. I think it's had its time in the sunshine and needs to be taken out of Pioneer to allow the other mid range decks to exist.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Go ahead and hit that goblin token and the fable right in the shins with the lead pipe because I'm tired of seeing it.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think that we're going to have August 26th going to come out. Amalia or Wild Growth Walker is going to get banned. Hopefully, Storm is going to get banned, and then no other changes to the format.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on. I don't know. I guess it depends how deep if they want to go. If you just want to like, all right, these two decks have obviously been outperforming everybody. But then I think that's like prime for Phoenix to kind of be that deck now, where it's like Soren. I wouldn't say is like the end all be all game ender, but definitely makes life very hard for Phoenix. And then of course Amalia just for some reason has like a really good matchup against the deck that is playing Lightning Axe and Fiery Impulse and is able to put a fast clock on them. Somehow has a good matchup against Phoenix. So like you
Uh,
just
the,
take their two bad matchups out and then you're left with like this is clearly the best deck in my opinion.
the biggest reason why Amalia has a good matchup against Phoenix, in my opinion, is Amalia's ward cost.
It's pretty annoying.
Paying 3 life is huge. Also, you get so much incidental life gain.
Mm-hmm.
So funny story too. So, um, my opponent, I was playing against is it Phoenix, ironically, in the finals of my RCQ that I won. And in game two, my opponent had like a 16 or 17 and 17-4 Drake out, Crackling Drake.
Mm-hmm.
I took that to the face and next turn was at 20 life still. Like I played like one or two creatures, got my life back up, did a whole bunch of stuff, and like was able just to like be back at 20 life. And still pressuring my opponent with attacking.
Just nuts, man. This deck is so nuts, dude. Oh my
This
god.
this deck is like so. I'm gonna sound super annoying and super big brain as a person, in my opinion. Amalia combo needs to play a little bit more mid range, and I think it would have a better matchup against the Rakdos deck than it has now currently. And that's what I've been doing. Is I've been playing a much more mid range plan with it. I had like Voice of Resurgence in there. I was playing 3 Sentinel in the name with City, things like that, and where I was like much more mid range and just like, hey man, that's great that you've killed Amalia 4 times this game. Here's my Sentinel coming in for 7 damage this turn with Vigilance. I love my Wild Growth Walker has gained me 12 life this game because I just keep exploring.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool, man. You know what? You did it. All of my Amalias are in the graveyard and exiled. Tap for 12. But hey, you got rid of Amalia. That's good for you. Good. That's a good challenge. And like that's what I've won a lot with comboing off because like there's sometimes when you just like you're already winning the board and you can just combo and win the game that turn. But
Mm-hmm.
like there's many games where I just like, hey man, here's a bunch of like X2s and like I'm gonna slowly pump them up with some map tokens and I'm gonna gain a couple of points of life and I'm always gonna trigger a couple of times. And yeah, I got like a board of like 2 3s, 3 3s, 4 4s. I'm gonna keep attacking you. You need to answer this. And by the way, I could just combo off next turn if you don't also keep mana open. Good luck.
Yeah, I think playing more mid range. I think mid range decks in general. If you play mid range, I think your floor a lot of the times gets raised a little bit more. Like I think your average, your explosiveness kind of goes down, but like your average draw is going to be a lot better because you're going to get to do something. Now, whether that's Amalia getting combo in turn 3, whether that's just playing like a grindy matchup to where, like, okay, my opponent feels obligated now, they have to deal with, to use their resources to deal with these things, and then they find out that, like, okay, they have the combo rolled up now, and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I think Amalia being more of a mid-range deck does enable it to have those draws where if I don't find Court of Calling, I don't find Collected Company, or I don't find Amalia naturally, I have this game plan to where it's going to help me look for an Amalia, but it's also going to actually put pressure on my opponent and force them to use their spells rather than being able to hold them back and take a few points of damage each turn while also outracing me as well.
Yeah. It is. It's weird playing it as more of a mid range deck. I did say this though when it first came out back in Atlanta, or the RC Atlanta. I said this deck will become amazing as soon as people learn how to treat it like Yawgmoth instead of treating it like Belcher. And I think that's what we have slowly come to, and people have slowly realized that if you play a mid range deck that just can do some things and have a stable board set, and then also go, whoops, I won. It's a really good game plan. That's what Yawgmoth did for literal years. They're like, hey man, here's a 1/1 young wolf. Would you like to kill it? It's gonna come back. Oh, you kill it. Here's a 2/2 young wolf. Would you like to kill it? No. All right, take two. Here's two more 2/2 young wolves. Would you like to kill them again? No. Take six.
Oh.
Yawgmoth. Do I win?
R.I.P. to the boy Yawgmoth. He's not dead or anything. He's just really struggling in this new modern climate.
Listen, okay. He's gotten the bird flu. He'll be back here in like the 26th of this month.
I don't know if
26th next month.
I'll be honest. Like I don't know
So
if
do I.
I don't know if he will. There's just so much other there's so much better things to do than play Yawgmoth. Honestly, like there's just even better ways of doing the Yawgmoth thing than just like having 5 creatures in play and saying, okay, I win the game, because you can do it with like 2 or 3 now.
True, true. I think Yawgmoth's not dead though. The people who like Yawgmoth are still alive, unfortunately.
Whoa, hold on.
If
Stop
they
it.
do well.
Stop it in Minecraft. But I think we've kind of, man, the fact that the regional championship is so far away, and we're literally gonna have Bloomborough and another set come out by the time the regional championship comes out
That's right.
is
We got
nuts.
we got that Dustmorn House of Horror coming out on September 26th. You know, literally a week before the RC, because Magic likes me.
You can pre-order those cards for an exorbitant amount, price amount, tag, whatever the heck you want to call it. You can spend a lot of money for cards that are going to end up being like nickels.
The only good thing about this is that Star City Games is now doing this, so I can at least pre-order from Star City and know that they'll have them. So
Oh,
look, I might
really?
be spending $10 for the uncommon. It's going to be worth negative nickels after the tournament, but at least I'll have it.
We know you spent $5 on these uncommons, but now they're worth negative $1.72, so you need to give us another $5. Which I guess if they were worth negative, would that mean that they owe you then?
I don't know anymore.
I don't know. Logic doesn't make any sense when it comes to ban and restricted talk. I mean, look, we're going to do something, but we're not doing it yet. We're gonna wait.
Well, yeah, that way people have trust in the process that they're going to continue to fuck us over.
I actually saw a tweet from Patrick Sullivan that said that the majority of the players probably didn't even know when there was going to be a ban and restricted announcement. So if you just decided that, like, hey, if you said it was an emergency, people probably wouldn't even realize that it was an emergency ban. They would just think that it's like a normal ban thing if you left out the emergency part of it, which I think some people know that, like, the window is, I think, a few weeks after a new set release. So I think Bloomborough comes, like, technically is legal this week, and we're gonna
Yeah.
have like 2 or 3 weeks of RCQ season before we actually get any potential changes. And he's probably right. honestly, like most players, I mean, even for me, I make Magic content. I would say a relatively decent sized creator, and there's still times where I'm like, oh hey, this is going on, like this is when this is happening. So I think in general, like the player base as a whole probably won't care, and the people that do care probably already want it to happen. So you might as well just do it.
Well, the whole problem I have is that their arguments all BS in my opinion. So their argument is that they want to make sure players have confidence in the process. They're not afraid of emergency bans happening constantly. But if we go look through the history of Magic, emergency bans don't happen constantly. There's a reason why it's called emergency ban. It's not because oh we do them once every 2 sets. It's because they very, very rarely and infrequently happen when something is actually busted.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at that point where something is busted. Nadu is a broken card as a whole. The deck is miserable to watch, it's miserable to play against, and it's miserable to play as yourself because it's not a predetermined or
Deterministic.
deterministic, yeah, deterministic combo. So you can't shortcut it in any way, shape, or form. This is a problem in and of itself. I've now watched two different modern tournaments, or two different 5K modern tournaments. I've been a part of one of them. It is a definite clock problem with going over on rounds and time. It's horrendous. It's horrendous to play against. It requires people to build decks and play in a certain way to stop the combo, which doesn't necessarily work all the time. There's a lot of problems with this deck as a whole, just from a logistics standpoint. It should be banned. And their secondary argument, which is even worse than their first, is that we don't want to ruin people's testing. People are waiting for Nadu to be banned before they're going to start playing in the format. There's been multiple people I've talked to, multiple people I've heard, multiple people who are just not playing in RCQs that are modern until Nadu gets banned. They will play in sealed because at least they know that they have an even playing field against anybody they're playing. They're not just going to accidentally lose on turn 3 because they decided to tap out.
Oh yeah.
And that is a problem when you have people who are going, nope, I'm not playing modern. It's not a real format until Nadu is banned.
It's kind of bad for like the stores and stuff too that end up running these events as well, because if people are invested in the format, and people are like waiting until essentially Nadu is banned, then you're just gonna have like worse turnouts at stores, which is going to be, basically store owners just being like, well, maybe if they're tuned into it, they're not going to just be like, well, I'm never running an RCQ ever again because I had such a low turnout this one time. Hopefully, they're a little bit more tuned in than that. But it's either way, it still kind of hurts them because you spend all this money to get the kit, you spend all the money on potential like prize payouts, whatever, if you're gonna kick something in, and if you just have no one that shows up, then it's like, well, 10 people show up to this RCQ. I'm not coming to here because there's not any good prize support for any of this stuff. And the store owners are like, that was just a waste of time, and I lost an immense amount of money because I didn't even get enough people in here to then buy product to essentially make up for the cost of buying the kit and running the tournament and everything. It's just overall a feel bad situation for player, store owner, and even Wizards themselves.
Well, it doesn't build confidence if you know, like, they all but said that Nadu is going to get banned on the 26th. Like, they basically came out and said they're going to ban it at the next BNR announcement. With their body language, what they were hinting at, implying about bannings, and then go, well, we don't want to ban it now because that doesn't build trust. Like, I would argue that knowing you're going to ban something, knowing that it's broken, knowing that it's creating miserable experience for players, your store owners, and everything else, and continuing to let that happen takes away way more trust in your system than it does just banning the card.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge problem because it takes like more players and more people are upset that they decide, hey man, deal with the problem until we decide to ban it on our arbitrary ban announcement that we set up. They've changed when they ban and don't ban things and when these releases are and aren't happening by their own rules. This isn't something that was like, oh, well, the government dictated this is how it goes, so we have to follow those laws. It's like, nope, we're the company that owns this game. We're the company that decides when things happen. This is something we dictated back like a year ago. We have to stick to it.
And I think in terms of what they were trying to go for, because we did used to have a banned and restricted announcement that would essentially take place a week after they would announce it. They would make an announcement that they were going to make an announcement, and
Hmm.
that's how it was for I want to say a while. Honestly, maybe it changed like after COVID and stuff happened, but I think I think you have some good and bad because as of right now, I think it's like a few weeks after a set release, we we have a banned and restricted announcement. Whether there
After
is no
a,
changes. What's
I'm
that?
pretty sure it's after a standard set release.
After a standard, probably because I don't even think. Well, Modern
They,
Horizons.
they don't consider a supplemental product is not considered a set release by the ban and restricted announcement.
That's so dumb because
Which which is the dumbest thing because if you make a direct to modern product or they like make direct to pioneer product, what's the what what's more likely to break something? The set that's purposely designed to be powerful so it can fit in with modern, or the standard set that's definitely not going to be power level of modern because we can't make power level modern like a whole set of power level modern cards in standard.
I thought we did have one that was like kind of that was like adjacent with the release of Modern Horizons 3, and then we didn't have any changes in that one. Either way, like four to five announcements a year, because I think there's like 4 to 5 standard sets plus a like a Universes Beyond or a direct to modern set. But I mean, either way, like 4 to 6 times a year, I think in theory is a good idea. Just
Yeah.
just at times it feels like that there's a little bit of a delay, maybe a more of a delay than normal. I also don't think that every time someone says, hey, you should ban X card because it's not fun or whatever the case may be, that you can just say, okay, we're going to make an announcement tomorrow that this card is banned, go have fun and whatever. But I think when you have like the ambassadors of the game, whether you appoint them there or not, you still have to take into account like some very popular people who have a very powerful opinion, who are very good players, or whatever ties they have to the community, and they say that this is not a fun experience because at the end of the day, Magic is a game, and the purpose of games is to kind of be entertaining first, competitive second, and if you have a product that is not entertaining and players don't want to play it competitively because something is busted, unbalanced, whatever, well, then you're kind of at like a double whammy here where neither player is happy. So I think you have to then at least look into performing actions that improve the health of the format in general. Because then if you have a healthy format or you have healthy cards, the game's fun. And then you also have happy players that are playing a balanced format that feel like decisions matter rather than, well, I didn't bring Nadu, so I'm already at like a 30 to 40% in all of my matches. Like that's not fun.
Exactly.
And with the game like Magic that isn't inherently flashy when you play it like in paper, like where if you play in like fighting game tournaments or whatever, League of Legends, anything like that, like when there's busted stuff going on in there, first off it sucks, but for the person watching or the people that play casually or whatever don't really care because it's like really flashy. It's kind of fun to watch all the stuff that's going on, whatever. Where Magic, you don't really have that. So I think at the end of the day, whether people like it or not, whether like content creators and other people shouldn't dictate when things get banned or whatnot. I also think that if you are, a perennial Pro Tour player and you are winning events or top eighting, I don't know, 5 out of the last 6, Simon, you should definitely at least look into kind of their claims as to why something should get banned or why something is busted, and then try to either make your own decision in a timely manner so that people aren't just disinterested in what's going on. And if you make that decision too late, who knows what kind of damage you would have done to not only your business but to other stores and just local scenes and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say any better than what you just said. I mean, I also think the fact that what Frank Carson wrote an entire article on why Nadu should be banned based off of logistics and everything else, not just because card bad, it's super powerful. Like that wasn't his argument. He had broken
Mm-hmm.
down the statistics and everything else about why it should be banned, why it's bad for tournament play, why it's bad for this, And this is the guy who famously thinks that like the meta should adjust, don't just ban things because card broken, we can't play against it. People should
Mm.
listen to, and like that's not what's being said. Like there's multiple cases for why this should be banned and why it's hurting the format, and Wizards are like just wait.
Mm.
And it's like that's not like that's a bad take.
Yeah. I think either way you look at it, if you went back to like the old kind of schedule, or I guess it wasn't really a schedule, it was just if we feel like there needs to be changes, like we're not going to make changes that week, we're going to wait a week, we'll make an announcement on Monday, hey, we're going to have a BNR set up for a week after said date, and then your deck is legal for that weekend, and subsequently after that it's going to be banned more than likely. I think either way you're going to have problems, whether you have surprise bannings where you could have up to however many a year, or if you do 4 to 6 every year, whether you make changes or not. Players aren't going to be happy with it anyway. I think you just kind of try to listen to the player base as a whole and try to block out just the nonsense as best you can, and actually look at some of the detailed arguments, look at whatever data that you need to do, and make changes according to that. Of course, never make a decision because, if the professor says that, Chthonian Nightmare is like one of the most busted cards and it absolutely needs to go, you don't just ban it because the professor said to ban it. But, you definitely, if you're looking at Pro Tour players saying that Nadu was the best deck that they've probably ever played or have played in a long time, it's probably worth looking into those claims.
Especially when the data backs it up too. Like
Mm-hmm.
this isn't a bunch of like casual people complaining because they're losing to Nadu in their FNMs. This is multiple professional players, streamers, people who play Magic every day who are saying this. We have Frank Carson who has the numbers to back up why it should be banned. We have the other numbers to back up why it should be banned. We have tournament organizers talking about how this is making modern tournaments horrendous. There's so much backing this up. It is not just players are upset because they're losing to a card. This isn't Wild Mikado getting banned in the beginning of the beginning of modern. This is, hey, we have data, we have points, we have things to show you, and then Wizards like, we'll get to it. It's like that's not how you should take this. Like like you said, obviously we shouldn't just someone says a card's broken, we don't just immediately take their word for it, right? Because broken gets thrown around so often in Magic anyway to describe anything that's remotely good or competitive, right? We've heard multiple times of insert card is broken. That doesn't necessarily mean it's actually broken or hurting the format. It just means that it's probably really good. Nadu is broken. There's no question about that. We've seen the deck dominate the Pro Tour. We saw it dominate in competitive play. The only thing that's not dominating right now is Magic Online because the fact that it is horrendous to click through and it's a lot harder to do on a time system like that than it is in a paper tournament.
Very true. And I had someone in one of my comments saying that you can't have online results be like the end all be all and why you make decisions or whatnot. It's kind of funny to think that when I would imagine that this is going to be a made up number. I would say like probably like 90% of like the results that you see on like MTG Goldfish and like top eight. I would say probably most of the results come from online, and knowing that Nadu is a worse deck to play online because you don't have the enough time to go through all your loops to actually just make it essentially deterministic that your opponent, outside of a few cards, like cannot win the game on that turn. You have to play a worse deck. You have to build your deck worse. You have to play it worse, and it's still, I think, it's like 4 or 5% more of the metagame than the deck that just is prophesized to have like the best matchup against it and doesn't have to necessarily do anything different. And if anything, gets a benefit of the fact that it can't have all of its lands blown up by Beseiju and all of its permanents bounced with like Otawara and staring down a board full of like 250 insects or whatever the limit is on Moto. Like all those things like make it worse for the Nadu deck and make it better for all the other decks. And Nadu still sees a significant amount of play. It might not be winning every single challenge, putting 8 decks in the top 8, but it's still so good online because there's just a lot of normal draws that your opponents can't beat if you just make a board full of like 200 1/1s.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean, so we just said that most of like MTG Goldfish's results come from online,
mm-hmm.
which means that it's skewed more towards online and it's skewed more towards Nadu being worse to play online. Nadu is still 15% of the meta if we look at 14 days, and if we look at 30 days, it's still 13.8% of the meta. So, deck that is worse to play online, more challenging to play online, and has about 3 or 4 more restrictions because it's playing online, is still the number one deck in the format, and still almost 15, between 14 and 15% of the meta.
Mm-hmm. In paper, we know it's a lot more miserable. Like I think if you've never seen it do its thing before, it's kind of like funny looking at the board state that it sets up and it kind of doing its thing. And I think as a player, it's kind of fun just flipping all these cards and getting to do these things. And like that's fine, like the first time, but then when you have to watch a whole tournament of people playing Nadu and you're essentially avoiding the players playing Nadu so you can watch other people that are not playing that deck, only to inevitably get to the top 8, and it's a lot harder to dodge all the
Yeah.
players in the top 8 because most of them are playing Nadu outside of like Apex, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, so just example, this is the last major paper tournament. It was a 10K from the NRG series. They're a huge tournament. They put on huge tournaments all the time. They do 10Ks regularly. Top 16 had 9 Nadu players. Top 8 had 4, with the final being between 2 Nadu players.
It's pretty good.
Like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I honestly like with kind of all that in mind, what happens after Nadu gets banned, honestly at this point, who knows, and probably for most people, who cares, because I think that there's a lot of strategies that kind of get unlocked when you get rid of Nadu, because now you have something like Storm who's going to look to kind of try to combo and race, but you don't really have anybody else that's really able to do it. Like Mono Black is gonna suck to like play against in a post Nadu world because if Soul Spike ever becomes a reasonable purchase, I
Yeah.
could see that deck seeing more play, and just in general, I think the format does get a little bit slower. At least it'll probably feel a little bit slower, I would think.
Well, I think so. When Nadu goes away, like Boros Energy, Mardu Energy come like the top 2 best decks, and they're not very easy to beat, right? Like it's not like you just like, oh, I put in one board wipe on my deck, I have won the game. This is no
Mm-hmm.
longer a challenging matchup. But like the matchup becomes a lot. Like it's not. It's a mid-range deck basically is what the energy deck is, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's very beatable though. It's not like broken beyond crazy. Like it's like any other deck though. Like when you go perfect curve and your opponent has no interaction, it looks super powerful.
Yep.
But you give me any deck in modern that goes perfect curve and your opponent does nothing, it looks powerful. There's no deck in modern that does that besides control that doesn't look powerful because it's always reactive instead of proactive.
Mm-hmm.
So like no surprise there. But I think once Nadi goes away, we're gonna have more of the metagame open up. And if you like look at the leagues, because a lot of like the leagues, you kind of see what a post Nadi world will look like because people aren't just jamming Nadi in leagues because it's not fun. Like unless you're really desperate for play points, it's not what you. Excuse me, it's not what you want to be doing at all. Like you want to be playing decks that are gonna like either you're trying to learn something, work on something, doing something. Working on Nadi is almost a pointless point, I hope, at this point, because I think it's all but going to get banned on the next BNR announcement. Wizards. But I do think that post Nadu, the meta opens up a lot, and like even when you start looking at the decks, nothing like when we look 30 days out for the meta game. So we take away Nadu. The next 2 best decks are at 10.6 for Jeskai, Boros Energy's at 8.9, and then we go 5.8, 5.4, 4.6, 3.7. So nothing's like it's nothing crazy, right? So like and then so I think Boros Energy will be top deck or like most played.
Mm-hmm.
It's put up consistent numbers. It's fun to play. It has basically all the trademarks of what you want for a deck.
Yep.
I think Jeskai Control probably drops down a little bit because Naudi is one of its best matchups, and then it's going to have to reconfigure, figure out what it's playing against, what it's worrying about. Um, Maybe Mono Black mid range jumps up some, but I still think there's a lot of people who aren't going to be building that deck because Soul Spike is like 260 for a play set, and that card ever sees any meaningful reprint, that card's dropping hard.
Oh yeah.
Gordeal's Vengeance probably jumps back up a little bit more than meta share. Ruby Storm will try to jump up, and then we'll remember people have sideboard cards for it, and it will drop back down. Eldrazi decks will still be around. Eldrazi Tron, Through the Breach. Eldrazi aggro probably becomes a little bit more than meta because that deck just folds to Nadu.
Mm-hmm.
Nadu has to stumble and Eldrazi has to have perfect curve of Thought-Knot Seer on turn 2. It has to go the 2-1, the Eldrazi Mimic on 1, Thought-Knot on 2, into Reality
Smashing
Smash
some
on 3.
realities, yeah.
Yeah, it needs to do that to remotely have a chance against Nadu, and then can still just lose. I think Dimir Murktide probably jumps up a little bit in the metagame, probably comes back. Amulet Titan probably comes back up to some degree. That deck's been hindered by Nadu. Living End probably keeps the same meta share it has, 3 to 5% of the meta, give or take a weekend. I think that all these decks, rise a little bit more popularity. Some will wax, some will wane, but nothing's gonna come up and just be well, now, I'm so glad we banned Nadu. Now we have to face Amp Raptor. Can't beat that card. No one's gonna say that. Besides a guy trying to play some janky deck.
And that for some reason has a vendetta against dinosaurs.
Yeah. Come on, man. They're sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I think once we get some kind of changes going on, or we get confirmation that there isn't, I think I don't know if people will feel a lot better if there's no changes, but I think from a playtest perspective, and just if you're trying to qualify for a regional championship, which the next for the modern season is going to be Portland, Oregon, and Charlotte, North Carolina. The latter, or the former in February, the latter in March. You're gonna have to play Nadu in the short term, or at least you're gonna either learn to play against it or play with it. And then after that, it's gonna be a pretty wide open field, where I think for the first week or two, people are going to be kind of playing whatever. You're gonna see a lot of people, if they weren't playing Nadu, you're gonna see them playing the same decks that they have been playing, and you're gonna see the Nadu players probably gravitate towards Boros Energy.
Yeah, so I think once Nadu gets banned, I'm under the assumption that it's just going to get banned on the next BNR announcement. Maybe I'm wrong. Hope to God I'm not. Boros Energy is going to spike hard quickly because I think that is the obvious next best deck. In the sense of it's already proven itself to be competitive, put up numbers, do all this, XYZ, whatever. So I think that's going to be the next best deck. Will it stay the best deck? Will it stay the top? I don't think so. I think we're going to see a bunch of cycling through where we're going to see, Jeskai Energy is the best deck in the format. Oh, nope, now it's Boros Energy. Oh, nope, now it's Gordeal's Vengeance. Nope, Through the Breach is better than everything else. Nope, it's Mardu Energy now because they changed everything. Ruby Storm somehow won a tournament because people forgot to play Graveyard Hate, or forgot to play Storm Hate. Oh, nope, now it's this deck. I think we're going to see a bunch of, what you want to see in Modern, where you can essentially take any deck to a tournament and win. I think that's what we're going to see, or theoretically see, where we're going to see a bunch of decks. We'll see, Boros Energy seems to consistently top 8, or Jeskai Control is consistently top 8ing. Or, we'll see, decks like that where, top 8 list. Oh, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 or 5 different deck lists in this top 8. Look, there was 2 Boros Energies. Who saw that coming, or 2 Mardu Energy, whatever. We'll see, I think we're going to see a bunch of that, where it's going to be a bunch of cycling through different decks now.
Right.
As to where now we don't see that. We see, Nadu being half of the top 8s for when it comes to, paper Magic.
Yeah, I will say, kind of as a little closing argument or whatnot in this scenario of times, the end all be all of everything. That was just a collection of words that I just knew. Isn't that crazy? I will say, as a kind of a closing bit for all this, I think if Nadu does get banned, which I think we're kind of expecting it at this point, that it's very likely to happen. It's all but guaranteed. if Modern can get to that place where there's 5 to 7 decks that truly feel like it's in anybody's race, where if we could see whether it's different energy builds, and then you have kind of like these other combo decks. If we can just get like a diverse mix of like aggro, combo, control, mid range, where we have like I said, 5 to 7 decks that are feel like any one of them could beat the other one, then I think Modern has more than accomplished its goal. And then in that case, Modern Horizons 3, outside of Nadu, has definitely done its job in terms of creating a fresh Modern format that is fun to play in, and we just needed to cut off the Hogak from the limb.
Mhm. I will say, even if like just from a standpoint of, you can tell players are beginning to think that Nadu is going to get banned, because we've seen all the cards kind of drop off in price, right? Like Springheart Natuku has dropped off in price. Nadu is like a sub $5 card at this point. Um, Shuko, the artifact enchantment, went from like $20+ to whether $10, or like you can reasonably get one between 10 to $12 now. Like everything has gone down in pricing. Like the lands are really the expensive part of Nadu anymore. But I mean that's gonna happen no matter what. Basically, lands will always be should always be the most expensive part of um any deck really. But outside excuse me, outside of the lands, everything in that deck has gone down in price because people know the ban's coming. They know that these cards are going to lose value. Like, well, at least overall, right? Like now he's going to get banned. It's going to immediately drop to $1 card or whatever it drops to. Like it's not going to be worth money. Like that's going to drop, things like that. And I think the player base knows this is coming. Wizards just needs to announce it and get it over with.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think at this point, let's just rip the band-aid off. But we are not going to get that satisfaction. We are going to have to wait until August 26th or whatever the date was for the official announcement of any potential bannings for either format.
Yeah, it's August 26th because that's a Monday. They like to do their bannings on a Monday for some reason.
Makes sense to me, I guess, and gives you the whole week to figure out cards for your Saturday tournament.
Exactly. That being said, make sure you guys learn Bloomberg's limited format so you can play in your RCQ still. They're coming up, and so you can actually have
Yeah,
a chance of winning.
that's gonna be me. Literally watching all the limited resources and everything that I can to figure it out.
Lucky for me, the next 2 weeks I'm not gonna be able to play in tournaments. Thankfully, or
Heck yeah.
next two weekends I won't be, or I guess this weekend and next weekend I won't be, so I won't have to care about tournaments until the 10th.
Lucky for you, because when this is going up, this is the last weekend of no regional championship things going on. Because then next weekend we'll officially kick off the season and give you guys time to again qualify for the regional championship in Portland, and then the other one being in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Fun,
Kind of,
fun.
kind of a shame that the one in North Carolina is in March. That's gonna kind of suck.
Why?
I don't know. It's just gonna be like cold. North Carolina in March.
It's not nearly as cold as the northern states that we live in.
I mean, it won't be like Ohio cold, but like still, that kind of sucks.
I will bet money that I'll be able to wear shorts and a t-shirt down there in March.
You're gonna do it anyway, even if it's 20 degrees outside. It's like, see, I told you.
Listen. Okay, don't call my bullshit out.
You're shaking like a freshly plucked chicken, and like the the wind coming off the ocean. You're like, see, it's not that bad.
Excuse me, I need to go see my dentist about some chattering teeth.
Oh, I just chipped every important tooth in my mouth. I look like that one dude from the Tiger King documentary or whatever the heck.
But on that note, guys, that's kind of our takes here on wrapping up the Pioneer RCQ season and getting into the Modern RCQ season with this ban announcement coming just a few 26 days away.
A few 26 days. Yeah, I think a month in about a month.
Yeah, a month from today, because this is we're technically recording on the 26th. So a month from today, we will get a new announcement, and Modern will be a format again.
And hopefully a good one. And we'll be looking toward probably more closely at the modern format, just because that's going to be the competitive format for the season. And I think as we get closer, since we are now both qualified for a regional championship, Washington D.C., which is going to be Pioneer, we're going to be, probably paying a little bit more attention. Pioneer will kind of go back to being kind of split when that time comes up, and we're planning on doing some special things for the trip down to Washington D.C. I guess for that like weekend and stuff too. So, I'm sure we won't stop talking about it. So, if for some reason you're going to be there, I'm down for meeting up with people, saying hi, whatnot. So
Oh yeah, I'm down for all 24 subscribers to come say hi.
don't sell yourself short, Randy. You'll have like 27 by then. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's gonna be more than that. We're gonna manifest some positivity because we're gonna keep spirits high. That we're gonna see some significant changes, and the format's hopefully gonna feel fresh. I mean, both modern and pioneer, and the best that we can hope for is a healthy format and overall just a good time.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to DC. I'm hoping there's some bands that come out in mod or in Pioneer for sure. The format feels very stale as it sits right now. So I'm hoping that they're going to change some things up. I know Wizards has at least admitted that they've been looking at Pioneer and kind of watching it, and I knew they weren't going to take any stands before RCQ season wrapped up. So I know they're going to definitely hit some things now that the season's over. So I'm looking forward to what their insights are and what they think is the correct direction to go, because I do think it's going to be a tough challenge to fix Pioneer as a whole.
Oh yeah. Well, do you have anything else you want to talk about, Randy?
Not at this time.
Alrighty. If everyone can hold their peace, then this will wrap up episode 16 of the Casual Spikes podcast. Hopefully, maybe we'll be back next week. Hopefully with some. I don't even know, because I mean I guess we'll kind of. We don't even really have like RCQ result. Man, I don't know.
It'll be the first weekend. We don't really, or first week we don't really have any like good results or anything going on.
No, just kind of it's gonna be kind of like a lull in competitive Magic, but we'll come back with something. We're smart guys. We can figure it out.
We'll talk about standard.
We'll talk about standard. Yeah, we're gonna talk about Bloomborough, how sweet it looks, and all the mouse people.
All the cuddlies.
But that'll conclude episode 16. I am Dakota, aka Karate23. That's Randy over at Modern Randy. Go ahead, subscribe to both channels, support us as creators, kind of keep us going on this journey, and of course, stay. I don't know, just stay in the game. Just don't let the coach take you out. Stay in the game. Just get there.
Don't catch the bird flu, guys. Don't buy in.
Stay inside. As I'm probably gonna buy some of the stuff so I can just play it one tournament. You know how many tournaments I've played like the very best deck in the format at 0?
That's
Actual just 0. Wait, which one?
You played prime time when it was like.
Oh, did I? Oh yeah, but I played it like it was awful.
You also decided I'm gonna pick up prime time and take it to a major event, and then did terrible with it because that deck does take some skill to play.
Terrible. That's subjective. I think I won a match or two. I definitely didn't top 8, but I think I did it. I think going back, like looking back on it now, I think if you put me back in those shoes, I played just a little bit better. I should have just played Death Shadow or whatever deck I was playing then.
But
oh well.
That will wrap it up for us, guys.
All right. See you all later, and hopefully we'll see you back for another episode. Again, subscribe to the channels, support us as creators, and we'll catch you all later.